Hey everyone, I want to say welcome to the Empower Series podcast. I'm so excited about today because the title of our podcast is Your Story, Your Legacy, A Journey Worth Sharing. I'm here with the previous Empower Series speaker, Tony Reed. I'm going to introduce him later to you, but we're going to talk about the importance of a couple of things. The importance of documenting not only your story, but also your family story and sharing it, because everybody's life is a tapestry of experiences and lessons that can be a blessing that will empower and inspire other people. So Tony's going to share with us his journey of what he's done, but also why he is so passionate about helping us document our history, and also him documenting the Black history around marathon runners. So before we get started, before we dive in, like I always tell you, if you haven't liked our program or shared our program, please do so. Provide comments, subscribe to us so you'll always be notified when we do a program. But I'm so excited. We're just going to dive in. So I have to tell you, I want to get this right because I took the time to write it. Today, we are honored to have with us a true trailblazer and visionary, Tony Reed. Tony is a renowned marathon runner and author, a filmmaker who has shattered records and inspired countless individuals as the first Black person to complete a marathon in all 7 continents. He has pushed boundaries of human endurance beyond his athletic achievements. He's a seasoned executive. He's passionate about storytelling, and he's a dedicated advocate for diversity and inclusion. And with his extensive experience in technology, leadership, and social impact, Tony brings a unique perspective to the world of storytelling. Tony is the co-founder and the executive director of the National Black Marathons Association, and he's the proprietor of the National Black Distance Running Hall of Fame. So today, he's going to tell a better story than I can. So I'll just tell you, hey, welcome, Tony. Welcome back to the Empower Series. I'm so excited. If you can't tell that you're here, we were having a fabulous conversation that I'm sorry we didn't get recorded, but we're going to talk about that more, man. So welcome to the Empower Series, man.
Well, thank you very much. This is a very timely topic. While I was driving over here on the news, they were saying that the state of Texas got rid of DEI programs in colleges and universities. Now they're looking at going after DEI academic programs.
So isn't that crazy? So I'll tell you right now, what is so timely about what you're going to talk about is the importance of us being in control of our narrative.
Yes.
Right? And let's not depend on other people to give us funding or give us authorization. We have to be the ones that are responsible for not only documenting our lives, but also documenting our ancestors' lives and what they've accomplished. So you're right, timing is perfect.
Yes.
It's very perfect, man. So welcome back, man. And you've been doing a lot. So you were on our program last January of 2020, right before COVID, when we were shut down.
Yes.
And I was just telling you that I was looking at that again because your message is so timely, or it's timeless, right?
Yes.
You're talking about goal setting and being passionate. So I love what you're doing. And you were just sharing with me that not only are you continuing to run marathons, I think you've run 132 marathons over 50 countries. Is that it?
Well, I've run marathons in all 50 states.
50 states, okay, yeah.
50 marathons in one state here in Texas. Mm-hmm. And I'm one of, at the time, about 60 people in the world who had done what's called the marathon hat trick, which is at least 100 marathons in all 50 states, and marathons on all 7 continents.
Wow.
And so there were only 3 Blacks in the world that had done it, and 2 of us went to the same elementary school in St. Louis.
Oh, St. Louis, right?
Yes.
And the Lou. Hey,
Yes.
So I want you to do this, man. There's so much we want to talk about. I definitely want to talk about your accomplishments, right? What you've done, what's motivated you, why did you get started in this, what your interests were. Also, you're passionate about documenting the history of Black marathon runners. But what we were just talking about, though, is at the January 2020 workshop, you connected with an attendee, and I was wondering how you got into documenting Black women marathon runners.
Okay. So the attendee decided that they wanted to have me as a life coach. And I explained to them at the time that I was going to be going on this 4 or 5 week road trip, almost 3,500 miles. And they wanted to go along with me.
Okay.
So this person, they had been retired from the military, and they had been kind of surrounding themselves, as I like to say, with pigeons, with people who really weren't going to do anything, didn't have any goals and aspirations. And this person was like, hey, I want to get out there in the world and see things. So I said, you feel free to, you can come on a trip with me. These are my rules to the road. You can leave anytime, anytime you want to leave, you could go ahead and leave. And the second stop we made was to Orlando, Florida, where we saw a friend of mine, Marilyn Bevins, get inducted into the National Hall of Fame, National Running Hall of Fame.
Right.
So we had inducted her in the National Black Distance Running Hall of Fame in 2013 because the running community did not recognize this woman's accomplishments.
Interesting.
So as a result of us starting the National Black Distance Running Hall of Fame, after we inducted people in our Hall of Fame, the other Hall of Fames started recognizing their accomplishments and inducting them in their Hall of Fame.
Which was one of the reasons why you created the Hall of Fame for Black runners. Okay, gotcha.
Right, because if we don't tell our story, if we don't recognize our own accomplishments, other people won't do it.
Well, man, I want you to finish the story, but I think it's so interesting that you said that they didn't recognize your friend in 2020, and I think we were talking about before Dick Gregory breaking the record and not being recognized back in the 50s. But we're going to bookmark that and come back to it because in the 1950s and 2020, we still dealing with the same stuff almost. Right?
Yes.
All right, so finish your story though.
Yes, so after they saw Marilyn Bevins get inducted into the Hall of Fame, they were asking me about, well, more needs to be done to get the word out about Marilyn. Okay. So Marilyn Bevins was the first African-American woman to run a marathon in under 3 hours. And to put this in perspective, since she did it in 1975, 14 million people had finished marathons in the United States. Only 2%, or you're looking at 280,000, had ever finished a marathon in under 3 hours. Of that 280,000, only 19 were African-American women born in this country. And of that 19, I knew 9 of them.
Okay. But you knew 9 of them, but it wasn't known.
Right, it was not known.
Okay.
So for the rest of this road trip, I kind of started piecing together what this documentary could conceivably be.
Okay.
So I stopped off in Williamsburg, Virginia, had dinner with a couple of friends of mine, Sika Henry, who became the first African-American female professional triathlete, and she was going to be the original narrator of the documentary. She was so motivated. Once I told her about it, she went and broke 3 hours in a marathon.
Because she wanted to be in it, right?
She was going to be the voice. And so she went out and she broke 3 hours. The other lady that was there was Lisa Davis. Lisa Davis she set the world record for a woman running marathons on all 7 continents in 7 days, 30 minutes, 27 seconds. And Lisa also did the marathon hat trick of running marathons in all 50 states, 7 continents, and at least 100 marathons. So bear in mind, there are only 60 people in the world that had done that, only 3 blacks. And Lisa and I went to the same elementary school in St. Louis 10 years apart.
That's crazy.
In fact, she set the record 10 years after I became the first black to run marathons on all 7 continents.
Oh, man. Well, so here's a couple things I want you, we're going to talk more about your documentary. Because your documentary, now that when you created it, has won over 30 awards, right?
Yes. Yeah,
and that's crazy.
Both
that
of
was
the
your first one out,
documentaries.
right?
Yeah, the first one out ended up winning 11 awards.
Okay.
The second one ended up winning 19 awards.
Okay, and just to get this straight, so the way this came about, because at every Empower Series event, I always talk about getting hope, inspiration, education, and then connecting to resources to help you take that next step to achieve your goal. So what I like about this is that I believe the person's name was Wanda that you met, that attended the workshop in January 2020.
Yes.
So she actually took the step of connecting with you. She read your autobiography. She was not around people that inspired her and lifted her up. So she said, okay, let me find somebody. So she reached out to you and connected to you.
Right.
Now I thought that was kind of odd that she said, let me go on your road trip. And you're thinking, I ride solo, but okay, if you want to, here are the rules. But she rode with you, and through that process, I guess you guys developed the relationship. But on that road trip was the birth of the idea that more light needs to be shined on Black women
Distance
marathon
runners.
runners,
Right.
distance runners. Wow.
And Wanda was so inspired by meeting Marilyn Bevins, Sika Henry, Lisa Davis. She met Elisa Harvey. Elisa Harvey, the year she turned 40, she ran a mile in under 4.5 minutes.
Wow.
And she still competes now at the master's level, and she has several world and national age group records in the 800 and 1500 meter. So Wanda was meeting all these amazing women all along this trip. And by the end of the trip, she told me that when the lease was up on her house, she was going to put everything in storage. She was going to get a SUV and just travel around the country. And she did it. In fact, not only did she travel around the country, she ended up, I think she may be the first African-American woman to run a 5K and 10K in all 50 states.
Wow. Well, we got to document that if that's the case, right?
Yes.
We got to reach out to Wanda. So that is amazing, man. And this all happened in 2020, or the road trip happened in around spring of 2020. So after when we were shut down for COVID.
Right.
And when did you actually complete the documentary?
I actually completed the documentary later that year.
So within a course of less than 12 months,
Yes.
you got this idea. You started the process of documenting it. And what I was asking you, how did you get it funded? You actually got funding from organizations. And you've never done a documentary before?
Never done a documentary before, but I have to give a shout out to my bonus daughter, stepdaughter.
Okay.
She told me, anything that you want to learn, there's a YouTube video on it.
Word. YouTube University, right?
Yes. And also I find that once you let people know that you're interested in doing something, and they know you're the type of person who will take action and do it, they will put you in contact with other individuals that can help you out along the way. So for example, one of the individuals I talked with about this is Gary Corbett. And Gary Corbett is the Black Marathoner's official historian.
Mm-hmm.
After talking with him, he goes, well, I know 3 documentary directors that I can put you in touch with. So I was kind of surprised. I reached out to them, had a Zoom call with them, and with one of the guys, I noticed his 2 Emmys sitting behind him.
Oh, wow.
Now, naturally, I did my research on all these guys before I talked to them.
Yeah.
And for me, it was interesting listening to the questions that they were asking me about the format of the documentary, the layout of it, and basically the trick is holding a person's attention.
Most definitely, yeah.
So, for example, for this second documentary, we interviewed 6 people, and each interview took maybe an hour to hour and a half. Of course, you can't put all that into a documentary.
Mm-hmm.
So I ended up with 6 people doing 12-minute interviews.
Okay.
And the question is, do I show the entire interview at one time and then go to the next person, or do I have 12 segments with 6 little 5-minute interviews in there?
Yeah.
And that's the route I ended up going, because you can only hold most people's attention for 5 to 10 minutes.
Right.
So by switching out to having another speaker, I was able to hold people's attention.
Yeah, and the more you have, the more you have to work with as well, right? To pull things out. So I think it's amazing. So first off, what I'm thinking about, and I'm making a connection between what you did at the Empower Series, the connection that was made at the Empower Series, and our premise. So our premise is that we do financial literacy, personal development, but more importantly, on the higher level, we want people to be better stewards of ideas.
Yes.
Because I believe that out of the 8.12 billion people in this world, every single one of us are unique. And there's somebody that's waiting for our message, and there's somebody out there waiting to be touched by us, right?
Right.
And so when you did this workshop, Wanda reached out to you. She was waiting for something or someone to really inspire her to get more out of life, so she connected with you. On your trip, an idea came up.
Yes.
So that idea, being a better steward of your idea, what it does is it dictates what you do with your time. So what you do with your time is you started taking action on that idea. And then when it dictates how we spend our time, it also dictates who we spend our time with.
Yes.
And you started connecting with people. Because nothing of significance can ever be done alone, right? And I think the universe is conspiring to help us. No matter what happens in this world, whether it's good or bad, it's all preparing us for what's ahead of us. And so I'm like, I didn't even know this story, dude. This is like right on point.
Yeah, and it's a matter of there are some people that just will come up with ideas, but they never follow through. And then you have that small group of people who will sit there and go, I'm willing to take the risk. I'm willing to take the risk of failure. But at the same time, I know if I don't take this risk, no one else will.
Right.
So when I was running marathons on all 7 continents, and I was running a marathon down in Antarctica, I was the only black person in the race. I also happen to know that no other blacks in the world had run marathons on all 7 continents. And there was a tremendous amount of pressure on me to finish, because I knew if I didn't finish that race, it could conceivably turn back the clock on other blacks running marathons on all 7 continents, or even running international marathons.
Right.
And so there was pressure, and I did not want to fail. And so it's that way with a lot of things with me. It's like when you know people are looking at you, and you know that you could conceivably make history, there is pressure.
And I'll tell you this, but don't get it twisted, because everybody's being watched, right? So we are influencing as leaders everyone.
Yes.
And so I do want to talk a little bit about what was driving you, because the way I look at it is you are passionate about running, so something sparked that idea in you. You've done some phenomenal things running, right? Your life is definitely everybody's life is worth recording, but your life has so much inspiration to it, right?
Okay.
But in addition to that, you have written your autobiography, was read by Wanda and other people. You've done a documentary, and now you're passionate about making sure that other people do the work to begin recording themselves, either by writing, by audio, or by video somehow. Because if we don't do it, we're going to lose control over our narrative.
Right. Yeah, and I want people to think about if you've ever gone to a funeral, for example, of a relative, and it may hit you at some point in time that there were a lot of questions that you never asked that person. So for me, when my great-grandmother, Emma, passed away in 1979, and then we had the pandemic in 2020, and during the pandemic, they were talking about, oh yeah, there was this flu pandemic in 1918. And it occurred to me, I said, I wonder what my great-grandmother went through, because she was born in 1894.
Okay.
So she lived through the flu pandemic, she lived through the bubonic plague pandemic, World War I, World War II. I never talked with her about any of those things. I never even got to talk to her about her parents, who were both born into slavery. And you think that was a valuable firsthand resource right there that I never took advantage of. And so, you know, when I went to my family reunion, I found out that my grandfather had 27 siblings. By they were by at least 3 different women. Some of the kids were born 4 and 5 months apart.
Right. This is your dad or your granddad?
This is my grandfather on my mother's side.
Okay, got you.
And I'm like, they have to have some truly amazing stories.
Right.
And so for me, being kind of one of the family's genealogists, I knew a lot of their stories. And those stories motivated and inspired me to do different things. So people would look at me and say, oh, you're a geek and a nerd. But at the same time, they didn't realize that for many years, I was doing my own repair work on all my cars. And I was doing that because I knew my grandfather was a chief auto mechanic. He was one of these guys that would go in at night and tear down bulldozers and everything, build them back up, change all the oil and everything. So he's doing this at night. So when the workers come in the next day, there's no downtime. And I said, if he had the aptitude to do that, I undoubtedly had the aptitude to do it also.
So part of it is that when you look at our ancestors and the environment that they had to work within,
yes,
and the toughness that they had to endure to achieve their greatness, or even just to get through and just have babies and survive, right?
Right.
That can be an inspiration for us to say, no matter how tough our situation is, whatever we're dealing with, we can get through it. And we're getting through it not only to honor our ancestors and stand on the shoulders of the people who've come before us, but we're doing it to really set a bar and an inspiration for future generations.
Yes.
Right? So
Yes.
that's what you're saying that's driving you, right?
Yes.
Okay.
When I was at the starting line of my very first marathon, I'm standing in the starting line area. There are about 400 or 500 runners around. There are only about 3 or 4 blacks in this marathon. The white guys around me started telling me that I didn't look like I was a marathoner and I should run shorter races. But they didn't realize that I had 2 role models. One of them was my great-great-grandfather, Benjamin Coleman, who was born into slavery. And I just imagine the slave owners and overseers telling him,
Right.
boy, you cannot run far. I don't want you to run far. And doing the same thing with swimming. Black people can't swim. Well, you think about it. If we can run far and we could swim, that's freedom just like that. You could swim across the river. You knew that you can run for miles. So people placing this limitation on me, saying,
You can't.
I can't do this,
Right.
was motivating for me. Again, knowing Benjamin Coleman spent the first 24 years of his life in slavery. So that was motivating for me. The other thing is knowing black history. So I knew that in 1976, Dick Gregory, who's from St. Louis, ran from LA to New York City in 71 days, averaged 48 miles a day. I said, if this man can average 48 miles a day for 71 days, what is running 26.2 miles in one day? It's nothing.
Yeah, that's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah.
So those things motivate you. And then even prior to that, you were telling me about Dick Gregory breaking the high school distance record, right?
Yes.
And it was done at Lincoln University,
Yes.
right? So small connections, right? So-
Yes. Very small connection.
Well, I do want to bring this up. I'm going to give a shout out to my Aunt Zelma. But before I do that, my mother and father, right, when I look at their legacy and what their children have done, my mom passed away early in life before I graduated college in 1983. She passed away, and then my father passed away in 1988.
Okay.
Right, so I'm always asking my aunts and uncles about my mom and dad, how she was, their childhood, so I can capture their story. But then one of my closest uncles and aunts, Aunt Zelma and Uncle Jim, they actually, and my mother, almost everybody in my mother's family went to Lincoln University in Jefferson City because they're from Kansas City, Missouri, right?
Okay.
And so my uncle actually met my Aunt Zelma there. They eventually got married. He came back and was the president of Lincoln University for 10 years and was the first alumni to be president. And my aunt just recently wrote a book about their journey.
Yes.
Seasons of the Journey, the biography of Dr. James Frank.
That's great. And I got the opportunity to meet him when he was here in Dallas.
Right.
Back in
2014. 2014 when the Final
Okay.
Four was here. Because he's done some significant things in relationship to the National Collegiate Athletic Association. I just created a website that has access to his book, but more importantly, his record to document that.
Yes.
So Dr. James Frank, drjamesfrank.com, and you'll go there, you'll be able to read all of his accomplishments and what he's done. But my aunt took the time to write this book. She started in 2016. It was published in 2023. And it's to your point, the importance of taking the time and documenting. And when she first did this, she was just documenting this for family.
Right.
Because she felt like it would be beneficial for the family to know what her husband did and how their life was. And she wanted it to be an inspiration to other people to begin documenting their journey, because everybody has seasons of the journey.
Yes.
Right? And so I want you to share, if people are watching this right now, and you hear all the time that, hey, there's a book in you got to write a book. But there's a difference between just taking the time and reflecting on your experiences, your lessons, and how that's affected you, and then what lessons can be shared with other people to help inspire them. So if someone's sitting here listening to this thinking, oh man, my life is not worth recording, how would you encourage them to get started?
Well, to your point earlier, everyone in the world is unique. And all of us go through different challenges in life and in different phases, so to speak, of our lives.
Different seasons, right?
Different seasons. And we may not know who's watching us and actually getting motivated and inspired by the things that we end up doing.
Right.
And once it comes to families, I feel it's really important that we know about our ancestors and put those stories out there before other people start trying to change those particular stories.
Yeah, yeah.
One of the most interesting ones to me is with Ted Corbett. So Ted Corbett is considered the father of distance running in this country, and he's African American. A couple of weeks ago, there were 50,000 people who ran the New York City Marathon and then went through all 5 boroughs.
Okay.
People didn't know that Ted Corbett is the one who conceived of running that marathon through all 5 boroughs.
Wow. So where would they get that information? How did you know that?
The way I knew it was we inducted Ted Corbett into the National Black Distance Running Hall of Fame.
Okay.
And his son, Gary Corbett, is our official historian. So there was this narrative, shall I say, that was put out there that there was a white guy who conceived of this idea. And Gary goes, no, I have the documentary. I mean, not the I have the documents to prove this. And so with that, we said, okay, we're going to do what we can to put the word out about what your father has done. We're going to change this narrative.
Right, right.
And so we actually included that in this latest documentary about the fact that you need to thank Ted Corbett for the one conceiving of this idea. Because if he hadn't done that, you could not get 50,000 people running 8 laps around Central Park.
So that's crazy, man. So if you didn't do what you did, if you didn't induct him into your Hall of Fame and have his son there to really have the receipts to show what his father had done, then it would have been just, nobody would have known. It would have been whitewashed. No pun intended, right?
Right. He was one of the individuals who helped founded the New York Road Runners Club. I believe he may have been one of the first presidents. They did not induct him in their own Hall of Fame until we made the announcement in 2013, and then they decided to induct him. Gotcha. They inducted all these other white people, but they had not inducted him.
Well, here's the thing, man. That I would think that is a benefit going forward, but more importantly, to your point, there are people watching. Like, we're all leaders because we are inspiring somebody just in our actions. Yeah. And so we should, right now, start immediately documenting the stories of the people who are around us.
Yes.
In addition to ourselves. So those are 2 different paths. I want to talk to you more about what we can do to start journaling, documenting our own story. But before, there's limited time when you look at our uncles, our aunts. My parents are now gone, but begin recording, because when I found out all of the accomplishments that my uncle did, my uncle Jim Frank, I started recording him. Yes. Right? And I did the event at the African American Museum. And so almost every time we connected at the Final Four, or when he was getting inducted to the Historically Black Colleges and University Hall of Fame in Houston, I was recording everything. Yeah. Just getting it on film, right? Getting it on film, because if we don't, and there's so much, when he was president of the National Collegiate Athletic Association, it's hard to find film of him back in the day.
Yes.
So how would you recommend someone actually begin to get started in documenting their ancestors as well as their own life?
Okay, that's a good question. One of the best and most powerful tools we have
is the smartphone, right?
Is a smartphone.
Start using it.
Yes. For example, if you have a family reunion, some people may be camera shy, but you could, say, we're going to set aside time at the family reunion for these individuals to all come to this particular hotel room just to tell their story. So you can have this smartphone sitting on the table. It could be recording them, or you can get a tripod and have it on a stand and just talk with the person.
Okay.
What I do for my interviews, for example, I actually have an outline of specific questions that I'm going to be asking people.
Okay.
About where they were born, where they went to school, what their childhood was like. I would already kind of know the person's age, so I would know key historical things that happened in that person's life that I would ask them about, what was going on. As in, like, people like to say in my generation, so where were you when you found out John F. Kennedy Jr. had been assassinated?
Okay.
And I look at them and say, so where were you when you found out Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated? Pretty interesting, because a lot of whites couldn't tell you, but a lot of blacks my age could tell you where they were when they saw it on the news.
Right.
So asking questions about historical important events during that particular person's lifetime. Ask them about their marriage, ask them about their children. What challenges did they encounter while they were going through all of this? And how did they come out of it?
And I think that's great that you start with a list of questions you ask, during family reunions, or even what we're doing, since it's hard for people to all get together, is we're doing Zoom meetings.
Yes.
And we can record those Zoom meetings. And also we have first cousins having babies and second cousins and third cousins, and we lose track. So I think that's great. The other thing, though, is when you're asking your ancestors or your uncles and aunts and cousins those questions, you can also ask yourself those questions.
Yes.
And begin asking yourself, okay, what were the major events or turning points in my life? And then just beginning to write about that. I have a circle of friends that I go to high school, that I went to high school with. Sarah High School in Gardena, California. What's up, Sarah? But me and a friend of mine, Don Mahoney, was talking about recording the fact that our parents made a sacrifice to put us through an all-boy private school. But we lived in a neighborhood that wasn't so merry, right?
Yeah.
It was like, and we, the call for Sarah was Hell Sarah. And it was like, yeah, but when we came over, it was hell, right? but I tease because the importance of doing this now, I feel like I should have a book called Before I Forget. Because, so before we forget, we should start documenting this stuff. Writing down your own thoughts and begin keeping a journal. So I remember when you talked about your passion for running, you kept a journal starting in 1979, I believe, of your running journal.
Yes,
right?
Yes.
You still current, right? You still doing it?
Oh, I actually was writing in it today. But that's interesting. When I was writing my autobiography in 2020, I had tried several times before to write an autobiography. And when you go to the bookstore and you buy an autobiography and you read it, it kind of starts off, well, when I was born, and kind of takes everything through kind of chronological order. And I found out I couldn't write that way. So what I would do is I would end up writing a series of essays. So almost every day I would and you had to force yourself to sit down and say, okay, every day I'm going to sit down and just write for just 30 minutes or for an hour. And it could be the worst writing in the world. Don't worry about grammar or anything. Right. Just put the thoughts down on paper. And by about the fourth or fifth week, it just becomes a habit.
Yeah.
And by thinking of it as far as a series of essays, you could start with something and finish it within that hour and set it aside. Then, for me, I like to go for a run, think about what I'm, just go into almost a free thought type of thing. Right. And then come back, sit down, and just start writing for an hour. Some people may decide, they want to go for a walk and just kind of clear their head and just let whatever's happening come into their head. Thoughts about different people, and then get back, start writing it. And what you end up with is a series of essays. You can always go back and reorganize the essays into chronological order if you want to, or you can say, I'm going to have a section talking about my childhood, a section about my siblings, another section about, so you can divide it up into sections. It doesn't have to be in chronological order.
Yeah.
So
what I think is good, because being a good storyteller, right? So I have an idea, but before I tell you my idea, I want to hear from you, because I think you are an excellent storyteller. I watched the January 2020 program, and every point you made about goal setting or personality traits or failure and overcoming failure and the mantra you used, everything, you had a story for it. Okay. Did you do that intentionally? Like, how did that come about? I mean, what is your secret for becoming a great storyteller when you're telling stories and you're inspiring other people?
Thank you. That was very intentional. So when I decided that I wanted to become a professional speaker, and I made that decision, by the way, when I was in my 30s. It was just starting off in corporate America. Well, I actually started off in my 20s, but by my 30s, I realized I wasn't going to become CEO of a Fortune 500 company.
Yeah.
There was just way too much racism and discrimination that I was going to have to deal with. And I realized that by the time I got in my 50s, I would probably be out of corporate America, period. I mean, it was going to be gone. So I needed to start preparing myself for life after corporate America. And so with that in mind, in my 30s, I'm already plotting for, okay, I need to start getting articles published in professional magazines and journals to establish credibility. I need to start teaching part-time at colleges and universities, again, to establish credibility. And I need to start getting speaking engagements, again, at professional conferences. And someone told me, and said, if you want to be a really, really good speaker, watch television evangelists.
Oh my gosh.
Because when you think about it, they're able to get people to send in millions of dollars every year and they never met them.
Right.
So they said, that, they will make a statement, tell a story that everyone can relate to, and then finish it up by, this is what I told you.
This is what you took, and this is what I took away from this experience of the story.
Right. And I try to keep each story to 5 minutes or less in duration before I switch off to something else, because I'm thinking people's attention span is usually just about 5 minutes. And so that's, again, I applied that to the documentaries, which is why they kept winning awards.
So what did you do? If someone's watching right now and they have to identify several steps to become better, no matter where they're starting from zero, or they feel they're good, what would you say are the things that they need to do to become a better storyteller? What would you say?
To become a better storyteller, first thing they need to do is ask themselves, why do they want to become a better storyteller?
Okay, I'm going to make some notes.
Okay.
So you got to have a compelling reason why.
Right.
Okay.
For anything, to me, you need to have a compelling reason why, and that reason needs to be strong enough to override all the negative things that are going to come at you, all the possible distractions.
Okay.
If you're going to be telling a story, you need to be able to address, as I say, the WIIFM, what's in it for me.
Okay.
You're going to be telling a story to someone, they need to have a reason for why they're going to be listening to you. And you need to be able to give them something that they can take away with and that they'll be able to execute on.
Okay.
You want to keep it short. As I said earlier, most people's attention span is only about 5 minutes, 10 minutes at the most. Mm-hmm. So if you're preparing, for example, for me, even preparing presentations in corporate America, I was very conscious of this.
Right,
I could give a 1-hour presentation and keep the audience fully engaged because I'm consciously every 10 minutes or 5 minutes doing something slightly different, maybe just to break the mood of the room. But again, it's all about keeping people focused and make the story so that it is relatable. Mm-hmm. I remember going to church one Sunday and a guest minister got up in the pulpit and they said that their family is having major financial problems. She was a physician, her husband was an attorney, and she says, I lost my 6-figure job and now we have to rely on my husband's 6-figure job. And you can just see people going,
like, what? Excuse me?
I'm trying to get by on 30,000.
Everybody's broke is different, right?
Yes, but from that point on, she lost the audience.
Yeah.
So you want to make sure that the story is indeed, that people can relate to it.
Right. Okay.
So always keep your audience in mind.
You told me that story. I remember I was going to St. John's the Evangelist in Los Angeles, another private school, but it was in the hood. And one of my friends was like talking about, yeah, my maid was doing this, my maid was doing that, and all of us was like, maid? Like, you got a maid? Like you? And he said, doesn't everybody have a maid?
Oh God.
So, I'm sorry. When you told me about the lady not connecting, I thought about that. So you got to have a compelling why. Right. You got to make sure you're thinking about what's in it for the other person, because you can't just be telling the story, talking about yourself. Keep it short and make sure that it's relatable. Right. Was there something else you wanted to add to that?
Always keep in mind what your point is that you're trying to make.
Okay.
So you can have multiple stories, but they all need to add together and end on that particular point that you're trying to stress.
And I think if people look at their lives, like I said, we all live a very colorful life. Like, I don't think my life is that entertaining, but when people talk to me about stuff that I've done, it's really sometimes more impressive to them than to me, right?
Right.
So we really don't know. And so what I would say as an umbrella over all of what you just said is that if we want to be better in any field, no matter what we do, we've got to become better communicators.
Yes.
Because we communicate in every way, right?
Yes.
And so I was listening to this YouTube tape where it said, this gentleman was talking about how to become a better communicator. And he said, number one, you need to watch less TV and read more. So, right? So,
Yeah.
so that's key. We all watching too much TV. I haven't turned on my TV for a week so far, right? So like my TV is not on because I've got too much stuff to do. So watch less TV, read more. And then he said, when you have an opportunity, always speak. Always speak, right? Because
Yes.
get used to it, because the more you speak, the better you'll get at it.
Right.
And then he said, write, which goes back to your point of just write things down, get thoughts out of your head and on paper. If you don't like writing, you can talk and do talk to text, but just get out ideas, and through the process of thinking, imagining, putting words to it, and continuing to do that, and being in positions where you can speak. And if you're afraid of speaking in front of public people, you can talk to kids. You know, almost every elementary school has a career day.
Yeah.
And if you want to practice, you can go and talk to children, because they got your attention, right?
Right.
And so I would say, in addition to what you say, just be committed to having a compelling reason as to why we need to become better communicators, whatever that might be.
Yes.
Look at what's in it for the other person, make it short, make it relatable, and know that you got to get to a point, because people be listening to you and they're going like, where are you going? Get to the point, right?
Yes.
So would you say, and those are the things that you've done to become such a great storyteller?
Yes, and I like to call it really being able to develop and present content, whether it's written or whether or not it's on the screen, or whether or not you're actually saying it. It's all about content development, and again, getting the word out there. For a lot of people, they will have to move clearly outside of their comfort zone in order to do it. And when I first got into it, I found myself, at first I was somewhat nervous, you know, and then I began to realize that I would read a technical article or a magazine article, and I would say, oh, I knew all that. And I would read the byline about the person and find out their background. I'm going, oh, I had the same background. But they're the expert, and the only reason they're the expert is they got published. And ask people, if you've ever gone to a conference and you've heard someone deliver a speech, and you're going, I know that. Well, that person just got paid $5,000 just to tell you what you already knew.
Right.
So why don't you go ahead and get out your comfort zone, practice that presentation, and you can get your $5,000. I like to say it's just like sports, just like playing football.
Yeah.
You practice all week long, and when you look at the actual time that you're in the entire game on that Saturday or Sunday, you're only in it for about 15 minutes, but you spent all week practicing. The same thing goes for writing, same thing goes for speaking. You put in a lot of hours. You put in so many hours beforehand that someone else looking at you doing it said, that just looks easy.
Well, man, it sounds like the first step to anything, right? Whether we want to improve in any area of our life, so whether that's in our career, it's in our health, it's in our relationship with our families, whatever it might be, you have to, in my opinion, just take the time. Like if people are watching this now and they want to know what the first step is, then I would say sit down and just write your reason why, right? Why? And I know that when you were sharing your story, there are two things, like you said, that happened that made you want to become a good distance runner. But one of the things you said is that you wanted to you found out that you were pre-diabetic.
Yes.
And at that point, you committed to running and keeping a journal and being healthy. And I feel like you applied certain principles to that, but those principles that you applied to your distance running were applied to other areas of your life, whether it was professional whether it's now speaking, now it's you being an author, now it's you being, a documentary film director, producer.
Yes.
All of those principles are still the same,
Yes.
right? And so they're transferable, but you
Yes.
got to have a compelling reason why.
Yes.
That's where it must start. And if people are wandering around, not clear about what they want to do, you can start doing something, but like you said, as soon as you hit hardship, you're not going to keep doing it.
Right.
So you've got to have a reason why, because once the excitement of doing something goes away and you're just left with the discipline of getting it done, you've got to have a compelling reason why to push you through it.
Yes. And other soft skill that's really important is being able to accept constructive criticism. So if you're going to be writing something, be prepared to have someone else look it over and get feedback from them. When I did my first documentary, funny that I'm actually saying this publicly, but I put together the entire documentary, and like most people, you show it to your family members.
Right.
So I showed it to my bonus daughter, her husband, and a friend of mine at the time. I'm real excited. I just put all this work and effort into this hour and 41-minute documentary. I had to wake them up after 15 minutes.
Didn't hold their attention.
Did not hold their attention.
Oh
I literally woke them up,
Oh my God.
forced them to watch it, and then said, okay, talk to me about it. And one by one, they were just nailing me to the wall. But what I had to do was just sit there and just listen, not think about how I was going to respond, but just let it all just soak in.
Right.
And I didn't act on it the next day. I actually waited 2 or 3 days before I went back to the documentary and started making changes.
And so you had to be not so defensive. You had to listen, and had to take yourself a few days to get through the emotion of it, and then out of that, you got some good nuggets.
Oh, that's when it started winning awards. Literally,
Wow.
after I
Isn't that
made those
amazing?
changes.
Isn't that amazing? Yeah. So
Yeah.
It's your ability to be open and not be defensive, right?
Yes.
The lost art of listening. Get outside of yourself.
Yeah.
So if someone wants to watch this documentary, how do we get access to it? How do we view it?
Okay, so they can watch the first documentary is available on all the different streaming services. It's called Breaking 3 Hours, so they can go and get that one. It's on Amazon Prime Video, and I think about 10 or 11 other streaming services.
Okay.
The latest one, We Are Distance Runners, Untold Story of African American Runners, that one's available on Vimeo,
Okay.
Vimeo. Or they can go to blackmarathoners.org, and there's a link there where they can click on it to get to that streaming station.
Okay, so I want you to give me that information. I want to put it
Okay.
underneath in the description of this video, so they
Okay.
can come back and look at it. So everything that you need to get is going to be underneath the video. It's not there now, but it will be very soon after this, because this is live.
Yeah.
So this is great, man. And then if someone wants to get in touch with you, like Wanda, how do they get in touch with you if they want to take a road trip and change their lives?
Okay, well, they can reach me through my website, which is read-cpa.com.
Okay.
So read dash, not underscore, but dash cpa.com.
All right.
And they could also find information there also about my autobiography. So they
Okay.
could, purchase that and download it.
Well, dude, all of that's going to be underneath the description of this video, and there's a lot more that we could have talked about, but there's only a certain amount of time we have. But before we end, are there any other closing comments or messages that you want to leave our audience with before we wrap this up?
Yes. I remember the first time my first documentary was going to be shown, and I was actually going to physically be there to watch it at a movie theater. I was really nervous, and I was talking with someone who was there. And I remember she told me, she goes, the names of none of your critics is going to be on that screen. Your name as a director is the only one that's going to be there. So, people may criticize you, they may not like it, all these things, but it's your baby. You take responsibility for everything. Still, listen to what people have to say, but at the end of the day, your critics' names will never, ever be on the screen. It's just going to be you. So it's don't let other people run your project or run your life. You're the only person that's responsible.
Man, that's good, man. I like that. So even in your life, right? Don't worry about the critics. Just keep doing your thing. Keep running.
Yes. Yeah.
Keep running, man. I want to thank you for again spending a portion of your life and pointing to the Empower series. And so this is not the end. This is just the beginning, right?
Right.
Were you going to say something else?
I'm actually signed up to come on Saturday.
Ah, that's right. So every year in November, we have our last program for the year before we kick off 2025.
Okay.
So this year, we're going to have Brent Reeves, which is one of the co-owners of Smokey John's Barbecue, along with his brother, Juan.
Yes.
And he's going to share his story. So the way I look at it, he's going to share the story beyond the smoke, right? Because we all have this journey and lesson. So his lesson, a lot of people don't know it, but it's a family business. His father started it. His father, unfortunately, has passed away, so now the two sons are running it. He does have a daughter as well, but the two sons are running this business. And there's been a lot of ups and downs. Like the restaurant burnt down at one point in time. And so they've been through a lot. So their story is not just about resilience and success, but it's more so about grace. And so there's a lot of valuable information that's going to be shared. So if you join us, if you're watching, doesn't matter what state you're in, tune in, you will get something out of it. Like I said, every program we provide, we give hope, inspiration, education, and we connect you to the critical resources that you need to make that happen, just like you were connected to the resources to help you put together your award-winning documentary through Wanda taking this trip with you and inspiring you with an idea that you acted on. That's like, oh my gosh. That's like, if there's other stories like that, you gotta share them with me. You gotta share them with me. So, hey, I wanna tell you, I thank you. I thank so many people. I thank you, Tony, for being here again. I thank our sponsors, Comerica Bank, our new sponsor, Independent Financial, all of the individuals that have donated their time through volunteering, their talents, their in-kind services, like all of the companies that have done that, AE Media Group for making us look good on social media, as well as every individual who have donated, as well as you who are watching and sharing this with other people, because people are watching you. And if you have watched this and got anything from it, do not keep it to yourself, share it with other people. That's the only way people are gonna find out about the Empower series, and that's gonna help us reach our dream of positively impacting the world by inspiring people to thrive in every area of their life, because the principles to be successful are transferable.
Yeah.
So hey, if you want to stay connected with the Empower Series, you can email me at thrive@empowerseries.com. Go to our website, www.empowerseries.com. There you can find out about what we do. You can also find out and register about for the next event coming up November 16th. If you're not able to join us live or in person, you can always watch it at some other time. But please stay connected with us. Click on the survey to let us know how we've impacted your life, because we're doing an impact survey for the year. If you want to make a donation, make a donation. If you want to volunteer, which we always need volunteers, go ahead and give us your name, your email address, and what you would like to do, and I'll get back with you. So until we meet again, be empowered and inspired to thrive. Thank you very much.